It's Brian Wilson standing alongside Larry O'Connor.
And joining us right now is conservative black chick, Crystal Wright. You know, I don't like referring to people based on their racial identity, but her website is conservativeblackchick.com. So here she is. Hey, Crystal, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Well, great. And, we're still buzzing about you filling in for Brian Wilson last week. And Brian was like, well, who is this Crystal Wright? I want to talk to her. It's not fair that you got to play with her.
Fun, yeah.
Well, I had an awesome time, Brian, even though the coffee machine, as you have well heard, I'm sure, was broken.
Yeah, I heard about that, and what a crisis that must have been. Let me just say, I got a lot of interesting feedback from people who enjoyed it when you sat in, and you're not supposed to be that good when you fill in.
Okay, well, I'll tone it down next time.
Hey, Crystal, the president gave a few remarks to the press after meeting with Rick Perry down in Texas yesterday, and when challenged about why he wouldn't go to the border rather than the 3 fundraisers, he said this.
This isn't theater. This is a problem. I'm not interested in photo ops. I'm interested in solving a problem.
Meanwhile, Crystal Wright, I just went over to the Twitter feed there for the White House, and boy, there sure are a whole lot of photo ops he's been tweeting out about. What do you think of the president?
This is so ironic coming from a man who has done nothing all summer but engage in photo ops. So, he didn't think the crisis at the border was worth bothering with or visiting one of these detention centers. He was off playing pool and drinking beer with Governor Hickenlooper, I think, of Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado.
So if anybody, his whole presidency is theatrics, I was thinking about this when I read the Post this morning. It's on the front page of the Post. Once again, we have President Obama wagging his finger at Congress. He's like, Congress needs to do something about it. I'm not interested in photo ops. But I think the reality is if he went down there to the border and was caught on camera, a picture of himself with, this huge problem, it would force him into a box to really do something about it because he would be on record. We'd have a photograph, and that's what he doesn't want. He never wants to be held accountable for anything.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like his presidency is like watching Theater of the Absurd, Larry.
It's the photo op presidency, and he doesn't want a photo op.
Well, he does want photo ops when it's in his interest to have a photo op. But you know what? Interestingly enough, sort of a side note, I saw that the Society of Professional Journalists, and believe it, some people think that journalists are professionals, they sent him, the White House, a note. 38 news organizations talking about how this is the least transparent administration of any administration of all times. That they block, they inhibit the press, that they refuse to answer questions, they refuse to make the officials available. Did you see that? What was your thought?
Well, I've heard it because
you're in the public relations world.
Yeah, and I used to be in news when I first came to D.C. years ago. Larry and I were talking about this. So I remember filling in at the White House when President Clinton was in office for ABC News, and he would call on people when I was part of the press pool, and when you filled in for the anyway, I won't go into details of that, but he would call on people when you could shout questions when President Clinton was getting off his plane and this, that, and the other, and it wasn't as controlled. Every president has a right to, establish rules how he's going to deal with his White House briefings. And with this president, reporters have to submit in advance their questions, and then the president decides which reporters he's going to call on when he goes into the briefing room, when he has press conferences. And that is anything but transparent and in honor of our Constitution and the First Amendment. So, for a president who said that he was going to do things differently, I'm about hope and change, I'm going to transform America, he's transformed America for the worst. Not for the better.
Crystal Wright is our guest. And Crystal, when you were here last week, we were here the day after the Hobby Lobby decision came down, and you had some very strong feelings about the issue of the government forcing businesses to give contraception or provide contraception, especially ones that they find against their religious beliefs. Harry Reid of the Senate has the Senate has now found something to act on. They're fast-tracking a bill to override that decision. I want your take on that, but I also want you to hear what Harry Reid said when he was explaining why he was doing this. Listen to this, and maybe you can catch this.
The one thing we're going to do during this work period, sooner rather than later, is to ensure that women's lives are not determined by virtue of 5 white men.
Now, what's wrong with that statement?
Well,
5 white men.
Yeah, the last time I looked, Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, is not white.
Yeah.
He's a black man.
Poor Harry Reid. Yeah.
And the last time I looked, no man controls my life. Most women know that we control the decisions over our minds, body, and spirit, right? I mean, whether you're a white man, a black man, or other man, I don't think any woman walking around the 21st century thinks that she doesn't have a right to make decisions about her body and women's health or whatever. And this is just ridiculous because we know that this bill that I think Patty Murray, this was something that she concocted, Senator Murray, but it's not going to go anywhere in the House, which is controlled by Republicans, because Republicans are smart enough to know that women can access birth control. I mean, there's so many ways to get birth control today. I just don't understand this. And as many people have pointed out, Hobby Lobby, I think, covers like 16 different forms of birth control. So, go to Planned Parenthood and get it. I mean, go to a free clinic. I don't know how women are smart enough to know how to have sex. I think they're smart enough to know, make your boyfriend or your husband pay for the birth control. It shouldn't, and I'm a big believer, it shouldn't just be on the shoulders of the woman. I mean, what about the man she's having sex with?
Now,
I mean, I know some women don't have sex with
Are you talking about me or Brian?
Yeah.
Because
some women don't have sex with men. I understand that. But you get pregnant because of having sex with a man. That's still how it works, I think.
Last I checked. I want to take a sort of I've been dying to ask this question because we have many African American listeners to this radio station, and many people would say, "Well, I'm surprised by that," but many black people are conservative. But there are many people who just African American listeners are African American citizens of the District of Columbia who would probably not consider themselves to be conservative.
Right.
So when you have conversations with them and you come across as being a conservative black chick, as you call yourself, and what is the blowback that you get from those people?
Well, I would say younger people. When I talk to younger people in the District of Columbia, young black people, and you start talking about the issues, and even sometimes older, black Americans here in the District of Columbia, and you just talk about issues, on education, on prosperity, on taxes, and achieving the American dream, the heads will nod, and then people suddenly start, people who are open to, listening to you, right? Because I don't lead with, I'm a Republican. I lead with, I'm a woman who has made a choice that's not politically what you might think. But I would say that the backlash from people, not just in the district, but, most of the backlash I get is from black Democrats. And I get called all kinds of heinous names on Twitter, and, I get emails telling me I'm a sellout, I'm the C word, all because, if people go back in history and look, it was the Republican Party that was formed as a breakaway party from the Whig Party because they were against slavery, and they didn't want to continue expanding states in our union out west that were allowed to be slave-holding states. I mean, Lincoln, while people want to, kind of confuse that history, Lincoln was part of that group that created the Republican Party, and it was the Republican Party that enfranchised blacks into the Constitution, that fought to have, give us equal rights and abolish slavery. We know, Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation, but then fought for the 13th Amendment so that we could preserve ending slavery, because he knew after the war was over, his war powers would be over. And blacks, guess what? The first members of Congress ever elected, black members of Congress were elected as Republicans. So I have to say that blacks don't have political choice is the most insulting thing ever, and I don't know why black Americans aren't more outraged by that, right? That's like telling you, Brian, you're a white dude, you must be a Republican, right? Nobody would ever tell a white person that.
No.
Hey, Crystal, we got to leave it there. You know how it is. We got to go straight to traffic. Thank you for joining us this morning, though.
Come again.
All right.